Hi, everybody. My name is Marina Rodina. This is my third week at the Meadows, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Business Development here. I'm really excited to be here. Um, the Meadows Behavioral Healthcare has been specializing in developmental and relational trauma and PTSD treatment for over 45 years. Our proprietary trauma model was developed by Pia Melody and is integrated throughout all of our programs and services. We treat addiction, dual diagnosis, primary mental health, and a variety of levels of care with in-person programs in Arizona, California, and Texas. We continue to grow our Access to Meadows programs, offering virtual intensive outpatient programs in multiple states. Our standalone retreat centers in Arizona offers over 15 different 5-day therapeutic workshops and private intensives. We are known for our specialty programs treating problematic sexual behaviors, porn addiction, and love addiction, eating disorders, process addictions, compulsive disorders, codependency, and relationship and intimacy issues. I believe that we can be a resource for you and your patients from having multiple access points to care and in getting to the real core of our patients' issues for lasting recovery. We thrive in our collaborations with our clinical and medical providers in care of patients and families. I also want to add that I'm proud of the fact that our Arizona inpatient programs are in network with TRICARE and TriWest, serving active duty military service members, families, and veterans. We are also going in network with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield as of January 1st. So we're going to be able to open doors for more patients seeking really good quality trauma treatment. And we are going to hear Dr. Stuart Kaplan present today on the power of community during the holidays. And a little bit about Dr. Kaplan. He's the medical director at the Meadows Behavioral Healthcare, specializing in eating disorders and patient advocacy. With leadership experience at Rosewood Centers, Veritas Collaborative, and Camp Make a Dream, he has shaped the medical services and trained professionals in compassionate team-based care. Dr. Kaplan earned his doctorate of medicine from Columbia University and completed his MBA at the University of Amsterdam. Passionate about combining clinical excellence with compassionate care, he's dedicated to improving the treatment experience for individuals with eating disorders and their families. And Dr. Kaplan, take it away. I know you have more to share.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for taking a little bit of time during your day and talking about community, which is such an important thing to do this time of year. I do want to throw in just a couple more things about me and why a physician is sharing his thoughts. And then towards the end, when we get to the chat, hopefully everybody else will have an opportunity to share their thoughts, their ideas on community in general, but community over the holidays specifically. So the question might come to your mind, how did a pediatric oncologist lead me to become a community advocate? But the question is really, I grew up, and I didn't realize this until relatively recently, that I grew up with a sense of community being my major core value. And then that ended up shaping my career moving forward without my really realizing it until maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, which is about halfway into my professional career to this point. Um, I uh, I grew up in a kid without a huge sense of community initially. And then I started going to summer camps at the age of 6 and found my crowd, and then more specifically started doing theater there and developed a very, very strong community in and around theater. Actually pursued that for several years in my early career. Then I went to medical school. And then I fell in love with the field of pediatric oncology, which is not the kind of thing that I expected to do, because of the way the entire multidisciplinary team and family came together. And actually, most importantly, all of the families together within the institution came together and formed a community with a shared interest, a shared challenge, and shared ideas. And that just stimulates me so much that when I went into oncology, I actually never really practiced and immediately started working at and then eventually running for 15 years a camp and retreat center for children and young adults with eating disorders. And again, especially for the young adults who really feel so isolated during their treatment course, because an 18-year-old is either treated in a pediatric oncologist's office with a bunch of 5-year-olds or is treated in an adult oncology office where they run into men in their 80s with prostate cancer, women in their 60s and 70s with breast cancer, and just feel like there is nothing for them. If we did nothing else but bring these 50 young adults from across the country into the same facility and let them just talk, we did an amazing deed. But we did, we had programming too, but it was really the community that they were able to form that made that very special. When I was looking for a career shift, I kind of tripped into the eating disorder field, and initially did residential care. And although it is really important to not consider residential or inpatient eating disorder or mental health care in general, camp, it still does develop that same kind of community, that same sort of opportunity to be surrounded by people with a shared concern, a shared challenge, and learn from each other ways to move forward. So that's kind of my journey into community. And even in my administrative roles and my MBA focus was community within mental health centers, as far as staff leadership, board and founders go, and remembering core values, remembering culture, and how do we come together and form a pleasant working environment slash community where we're all together. So that's kind of my spiel. Thank you for listening to it. And I just want to take 1 second and celebrate and the community that we're all sharing right now to talk about community. So thank you all again for coming together and spending a little bit of time over your day. So, as I think most of us know, the holiday season often intensifies feelings of loneliness. Um, and it's important that we look at ways to address this. Um, Almost 50% of adults have reported feeling lonely during the holidays. Um, it's super, super pervasive. Um, Loneliness academically is a pervasive emotional state experienced by people of all ages and background, and it's a disconnect from meaningful relationships. Emotional loneliness is from missing close connections, while social loneliness is about not having enough social circles, feeling lonely in this world, lacking a sense of purpose, a sort of existential crisis sort of thing. Um, and overall, in a lifespan, over 60% of adults have reported feeling lonely at some point over the holiday season, 43% any given year, 61% over a lifetime. Loneliness can have serious health implications in and around mental health, as I think we all know, but even the cardiovascular system, the stress, really can affect short-term and long-term health. Many people feel lonely over the holidays. I wrote despite, but maybe even because of the festive environment that underscores not feeling as connected as they would like, and the importance of community during that time. Um, Typically, the holiday season is associated with joy. And in fact, one of the problems, and we'll talk about it in just a little bit as well, not only is it typically associated with joy, but I think joy is expected. So not only can feeling disconnected add to a real sense of loneliness, but also um, disappointment in oneself for not leading up to the expectations, and feeling inadequate, disconnected from celebrations, etc. Um, the what I have found has been the most effective for individuals who are not currently feeling connected in a community, for whatever reason during the holiday season, that volunteer work might be helpful, foster a sense of belonging. And I also find that entering volunteer work is a less threatening way um, to expand a community. For example, if for whatever reason you really and truly are on your own and you're looking for a way to feel connected, is it more comfortable? Certainly for me, I can answer the question, to walk into a room full of strangers who are having a party, or is it more comfortable to walk in, have a job to do, and then organically connect with those around us who, assuming you volunteered for something that's meaningful for you, already have a shared purpose and a shared connection. So the major symptoms of loneliness are the emotional symptoms: feeling sad, feeling despair; the behavioral symptoms: withdrawal from social activity, loss for motivation. Of course, this often is coexistent with depression, major depression, anxiety, lots of the behavioral health conditions that we see every day. And then physical symptoms: changes in sleeping, which in and of itself can lead to increased anxiety, increased depression, um, changes in energy level, changes in eating. And it creates, a vicious circle of the loneliness just getting worse and worse. Um, so again, societally, holidays are a time of togetherness, but for many, they can also be a time of isolation and stress, where community could be a sense of joy and support, a vital role in improving mental health, spreading kindness, and building a sense of belongings. Um, all of these coming together will hopefully uh, lessen the symptoms of loneliness. So the benefits of community support: mental health, again, reduces feelings of loneliness, reduces anxiety, reduces depression by fostering that sense of connection. That connection is amplified by the shared joy. It provides support systems, emotional, practical support during the holiday season. And then again, acts of kindness, encouraging volunteering, donations, helping others, creating a ripple effect of goodwill, which is again what the holiday season is all about. Examples of communities that are built during the holidays, and that ways that people who are feeling disconnected can become involved. Again, my number one go-to is volunteering at events, volunteering for organizations, even if it's behind the scenes, which again is of the non-threatening way to get involved, probably the least threatening way to get involved. And I often think of meal kitchens first, feeding the homeless, feeding the hungry, and working in the back in the kitchen, not by yourself, with other people who are working in the back, working in the kitchen. And again, this is an important part of who they are and what they feel is important to them, fostering natural connections, natural community. Um, Toy drives, again, you don't have to hand out the toys to the kids. If family is particularly triggering to you right now, you don't have to see those family dynamics that are expected in society. You can work in the back and wrap the presents with other people who are working in the back and wrap the presents and have, again, that shared interest, that shared joy. Um, Holiday food drives, neighborhood lights and gatherings, probably a little more threatening for most. And then, as you're listening, really one of the things I want to do at the end, and I do expect that there will be some time at the end, um, is share some strategies that have been effective for you, that have been effective for your clients and patients, that are coming into your head now as we're talking. I have to admit, I thought that this was going to be more interactive, but then I now realize with the number of people involved, that would be a hard thing to do. But that was my hope for right here. But I think we can effectively do that in the chat at the end as well. So any thoughts that come to you as we move forward, please just jot them down and we will get to them at the end. So joining local events or initiatives, community caroling, decorating events, holiday potlucks. Again, a little, for some people, it's stepping out of a comfort zone. What may feel more comfort is lending a hand to neighbors, supporting local businesses, staying connected through cards or simple gestures to old friends. Encourage people to think of people that were important to them in the holidays in the past and not dwell on the fact that they're not together now, but ways that they could connect with them now. And especially, despite the double-edged sword, in 2024, social media, online communities, texting, God forbid, pick up the phone, ways to stay connected with people you've been connected with before. It's never been easier. And although it does not take the place for most of a physical community, there is something to be said for social media groups, as long as the red flags for so many people that we treat, which we all know, are avoided. And, I think we can help our patients and clients by developing strategies to do that in a healthy way. I want to step back and really talk about one way social media, personally for me, I've watched build a community. One of the programs we did at this camp I talked about earlier was we developed a young adult brain tumor survivor program. So these were for long-term survivors of childhood brain tumors who are now young adults. And for those of you who don't know, a childhood brain tumor is a chronic, most pediatric cancers, but in general, it's specifically almost all childhood brain tumors are chronic experiences. They are not a disease. Typically most people think of cancer as you die or you're cured. For most, it's somewhere in between in a chronic experience, particularly for kids who are treated with brain tumors, where they often require surgery that affects vital parts of their brain, or radiation therapy that can cause cognitive deficits, problems with affect, problems with processing, problems with IQ if they're young enough, physical impairments, and risk for secondary cancers. Specifically, the cognitive impairments for so many of the individuals we treated was an issue that, although these were young people that probably could live independently or at least in a group housing situation away from their family, or also people who could have a job if stocking at a Walmart, stocking at a Home Depot, but they don't, because the sense of confidence was never built. So our goal was to bring these people together in Montana, have real vocational workshops, talk about living independently, doing some vocational placement testing, all those kinds of things, and really give them the tools and skills to live as independently as they could, as opposed to most of them at this point, their mother was their best friend and they played Xbox all day. There was really no community for them outside of their own home. So that didn't happen, quite frankly. We did not have 50 individuals that then went home and got jobs and moved out of their houses. But what we did do, and this was an unintended consequence, is we developed, and this was right at the cusp of Facebook. So this was probably about between 10 and 15 years ago was that first program. It was 15 years ago. They developed a online community where they really and truly were connected. And even to this day, the 2009 Facebook group for the, we called it the Heads Up Conference, is still active, still active. And that's a community they would not have had otherwise. Um, and it's a community that really, and now they do webinars and they do educational events once a week, all virtually. And it's really been amazing to see. So remember that social media can be our friend. Um, and that, like I said, completely unintended consequence. That program is going strong 15 years later. And still the connections that are formed in that week are lifelong. And these are people that would have been completely isolated, almost definitely otherwise. Um, it's one of the best ways to build a community is to overcome a challenge together, whether that challenge is being a survivor of childhood cancer. Um, so during difficult times like natural disasters, economic hardships, personal loss, communities are naturally formed. During the holidays, the ability to provide emotional support, social support to those in need exists, um, and to be a part of a group that helps can help people navigate the feelings of grief, loss, or displacement they may feel over the holidays. Um, we talked about volunteering a fair amount. I talked about how I feel like it's non-threatening, less socially awkward ways to connect interests with others, and way to fill holiday time with others through what we've talked about, all the things we talked about: food banks, homeless shelters, gift giving. But as we all know, that the it gives an internal sense of joy and purpose and well-being to serve others, and at the same time we have that double-edged sword in a positive way of being able to connect with others who feel the same way. So as you can tell, because I've harped on it, this is one of my favorite ways to get connected for people who feel uncomfortable getting connected in other ways. That said, even if someone is not ready to be a social butterfly, and this is something that we can help impart into our patients and clients, is help them remember that the gift of presence, being present, not presence, being present and listening is appreciated by loved ones. Active listening in particular is not as prevalent during the holidays as I would like it to be. Um, if you think about the last holiday party you went to, um, most people are actively talking about their lives, wanting to talk about their lives, and having pretty superficial conversations so they can get around the room and see everybody they need to see. Um, the ability of somebody to just be present and to actively listen would be so appreciated by so many. And that's something that we can talk to our patients and clients about, that even if you're not ready to go around the room and be a social butterfly, be present. Listen, that would mean so much to so many around you. Um, if somebody is struggling, if you're able to, be able to accept help with grace and help our patients and clients accept that. Um, it's helping others to connect in a genuine way, the way that I've described that volunteerism can help an individual connect in an organic, natural way. Um, and at the end of the day, I think it's important to challenge comfort zone, but also at the same time respect your own boundaries. And I think that most individuals know, many individuals with the help of professional staff such as us, maybe we can work together to define and outline things that might be challenging but doable, versus just outside what our boundaries can handle right now. Other ways to build a community: check on neighbors, friends, check on others who may be struggling. Participate in local events. If we remember a tradition that we had as a kid or in our past adult lives, um, in and around the holidays. Think of ways that maybe we can share that with others. Um, and again, support local businesses. Another thing I feel pretty strong about. But again, it's easier to feel connected at the neighborhood small locally owned gift shop than it is to walk into a Walmart. If somebody has a particular interest in scrapbooking and there's a local craft shop, small, and even in a non-threatening way, somebody goes in to browse around once a week. If it's a small local store, people will get to know you. And that's another way that we might be able to develop our own organic community. Of course, this is important too, having a plan. So work with our patients and clients together to identify what triggers there might be, to set boundaries, to not feel obligated, to limit engagement, to have a plan B. If I'm somewhat concerned about going into the scrapbook store because it's going to make me feel uncomfortable, as opposed to walking out and failing, let's immediately have, what's the next thing? What's the next thing that I can try? If you're in a situation that might make you uncomfortable, have an exit plan early. And again, utilize friends and then utilize professionals to help with that holiday plan. So I think planning in advance is really, really important. If there's going to be something that you are challenging a comfort zone, but not crossing your boundaries. Again, I talked about social media. I talked about the pros. We all know the cons. So social media, if it's toxic, it's one that keeps you up late at night, keeps you from doing activities you would be doing otherwise. Since I particularly specialize in eating disorders, of course, I immediately think of unhealthy comparisons. But it also can promote a health community, can promote community in general, building support networks, raising awareness, promote causes. So it is a double-edged sword. But I think if we're working with our clients about identifying strategies for combating loneliness and building community, I do think it's important, in addition to making the plan that we just talked about, to also really, really talk about social media upfront, and the pros and cons. And, for some, it just may be something that's not a good idea at all. Addictive personalities is first that comes to mind. But for some, it really can be a useful tool. Groups and community are not the same thing. So again, we encourage everyone to know what your comfort zone is, know what brings you joy and satisfaction, to prioritize self-care, seek support, to focus on positive connections, even if that's not in a physical community. And then also important, I just want to touch on the fact that communities and even groups may not be for everybody at every time. Sometimes it's okay to be alone, as long as that isn't going hand in hand with pervasive loneliness. And that really is possible. And I take myself as a tremendous example of that. There are many times where I thrive by being alone, but I don't feel disconnected in any way. And then the other thing is, because of the pressure of the holiday season and the expectations of the holiday season and the fear of failure if you don't live up to those expectations, maybe consider a soft involvement in a community organization after the holiday season. So to have a plan to get involved once everything comes down a little bit. And again, that's two advantages. One, it's not as overwhelming. As much as I love the idea and would love it if it were for everybody to volunteer at a soup kitchen, and if it's not something that you want to be in the front of the house for, too overwhelming, you want to be in it, but that could be overwhelming too. It wouldn't be nearly as overwhelming if we waited until after the holidays, number one. And number two, it's that help is probably more needed. This kind of help comes out of the woodworks in the month of December, and then mid-January comes along and they still need help, but there aren't nearly as many people to help. So that real sense of doing something important can really be imparted for somebody who's not really able or ready to go right now. Um, so, and this actually is my last slide, so we're going to have plenty of time. Community is the heart of the holiday. It's where we find strength, joy, and sense of purpose. For me, I think we've discovered it's the heart of everything. By connecting with others, we uplift ourselves, but also create a positive ripple effect that extends far beyond the holiday season. But again, remember that community means different things to different people. Alone is not necessarily isolation. And then I always like to close when talking about community that alone can be okay, but only if it's okay. Hoping that makes sense to you, because it's a really important phrase that I use when I talk to individuals in and out of my practice about being alone, and that's not necessarily always such a bad thing. So that ends the formal part of my presentation. I would love to know, and I was always a Zoom guy, but I can open the chat.
I can go ahead and read the questions if there are any. Let's see. I don't think that there are any questions in the chat.
I would like to give everybody a chance. Of course, no obligation, but if anything has come to mind while you're gathering those thoughts, I do want to talk a little bit about one particular program that we are doing at Meadows Behavioral Healthcare that is relatively new, and you may all not be familiar with it. And I just want to take a minute and plug it because I am an eating disorder professional. I came to the Meadows initially in June of this past year to sort of revamp, revitalize the medical care program at the Meadows Ranch. And as I think most of you are aware, the Meadows Ranch closed its doors in the fall, early fall this year. But eating disorders, as Miranda mentioned in the beginning, always an important part of our strategy. We know it is a very important population. We also know that eating disorders rarely, if ever, and I would venture to say almost never, stand alone, that they're often coexisting mental health disorders along with the eating disorder. And also that as we all know, eating disorder behaviors can sort of come out when other issues are addressed, and vice versa. So as trauma is addressed intensively, which is something that we do so well at MBH, somebody who has a history of eating disorders may develop behaviors again, and vice versa if there's an eating disorder patient who is coming in for that reason, say that they're actively purging multiple times a day, and we're able to quiet that, depression, anxiety symptoms may really start to flourish. So we recognize the need to treat individuals in a really organic, fluid way and address what's coming out first. So we developed a series of programs within a blanket that we're calling the Meadows Seasons. And the Meadows Seasons has three very distinct programs. We have one for individuals because it's in a more self-contained building than the rest of the campus is. So one patient population that we house there is for both older individuals, but mostly individuals with mobility issues or individuals that are not ready to be a part of a larger community. Um, and it's an opportunity to kind of have a softer approach, do more intensive individualized work for a population that's just not suitable to be in one of the other programs in the Wickenburg campus that's so open and spread out and not so attainable to somebody with physical limitations. Another program which we're calling Clarity is sort of a more acute psychiatric short stay facility where we can also kind of do an assessment to decide which of our many programs this individual may be most appropriate for if it's unclear um, during their intake process. And then third, the program that I am very involved with is the eating disorder program within the Meadows Seasons, where we take a more, and I've been doing this for 15 years and I've done it in several centers, but we really do this individualized approach that I don't see anybody else doing. So we look at things like physical activity, we look at things like moving around meal cards. We meet every individual where they're at and develop a specific program for them. Dietitian on site, psychotherapist on site with eating disorder experience, psychiatry and medical on site, and I supervise all of the medical care. It is a really different eating disorder program than I've seen elsewhere, mostly from the aspect of individualized care. And it is a program that programs separately from the other two programs that happen to be housed at the Meadows Seasons. In addition, prior to that transition from the ranch to the eating disorder program at the Meadows Seasons, we did start a PHP in our Scottsdale location, and we are opening more partial programs across the country, specifically for eating disorders. And Kara Fowler is the executive director of our eating disorder programs, is overseeing all of those. She oversaw the ranch and has years of eating disorder experience as well. And I oversee the medical care at all of those facilities as well. So it is a new resource that we have at the Meadows, which we're excited about. Not what the point of this talk was, but I did want to put the plug in as long as we had a little bit of time.
Thank you, Dr. Kaplan. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. There is a question here that I'm seeing from Shelby, and she said, I had problems getting on and missed the start. You might have covered this. Do you see a difference with age groups, different generations perhaps, and their openness to reach out and be more involved with community members, or is it more individual to individual?
It's a great question. I've not thought of it. I'd love to hear if others have an opinion on that. I think but this just might be expectations and cultural norms, but I think that older individuals, especially elderly individuals, might have more trouble. These are people that probably had a community, a family that they're losing around them, and never really learned how to express that, as opposed to a younger person who probably is feeling loneliness for other reasons and may have had experience with that, ironically, even in their shorter lives. But that's a theory. I do not know an actual answer to that, but that's what my first thought is. but I also think it's certainly very individual.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or the Q&A.
If no one else has anything else, I'm happy to give the gift of 15 minutes. And again, I appreciate all, and this is available. The recording will be available. I think it's being sent out tomorrow. There is a new message. I just want to make sure. Oh, thank you for joining us. And again, I really do appreciate everybody's time today. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. I hope that there were some tips that we can share with patients and clients, or maybe with ourselves. I hope that it was somewhat helpful. And again, I appreciate your time and happy holidays to everyone.